Cool. So we've got quite a few of you on now, so we might get started. So just to give a quick little introduction. So my name's Diana. I'm a nutritionist. So I work for little Étoile. And Melanie, obviously, is, the expert prenatal and infant dietitian. So Melanie is going to be taking you through today's session. We are going to have a Q&A at the end of the session. So if you've got any questions, feel free to just hold on to the end of the course. We might do some questions throughout, but we will do a Q&A at the end, and we will be giving out some prizes for those of you that are asking questions. So I'll be taking note of who's asking questions, and we will be contacting you and sending you out some free little Étoile bundles. We also have our Facebook group, which you would have seen on the email that we sent out. So please jump onto the Facebook group. It's a closed group. It's where we will be posting some of our printable handouts. We'll have discussions going on. You can ask more questions if you think of anything after today. And for those of you watching the recording that weren't able to make the live session, you can pop any of your questions into the Facebook group. So you can ask Melanie directly your questions. All right, so we might get started, and I'll hand over to you, Melanie.
Thank you so much, Diana, and hello and welcome to everybody. Today's session I want to make really, really practical. So I am going to encourage you guys actually to participate in the chat as much as you can, because I really want to be here to serve you. I know that you're all new mums, and it's a time in life when you have a million questions, and a lot of them are really personal questions as well. So I would like to start by asking you guys a question, and that is, how old is your bubba? So let me know in the chat how old your bub is, because today we're going to be really focusing on when to introduce solids. So Jessica has a 5-month-old, another Jess has a 4-month-old, Brad has a 5-month-old, Vandana has a 12-month-old, Andrea has a 5-month-old as well. A little 9-week-old to Ash. Shveta has a 9-month-old, Lily 4.5 months. And sorry for all of the other names that I'm not getting to, but yeah, it's good to, I'm scanning down. So it looks like we've got from 9 weeks, looks like the youngest, through to about 10 months. So yeah, thank you all for sharing the ages of your little ones, and a massive congratulations. Like, it's the most exciting time of your life, I think, and exciting yet also scary. I have a little 2-year-old who is just the light of my life, and I just can't believe how quickly the time has gone. So as I said, today I really want to be focusing on when to start solids. So first thing to know is there's really, I'd say, kind of 3 key things that we want to be looking at in terms of when to start solids. So the first thing is their age. So the guidelines, and it depends which organisation you look at, but usually the most common guideline that you'll hear is around 6 months. Now, around 6 months is quite ambiguous in some ways, isn't it, when you're a new parent, because you're like, well, does that mean before 6 months, after 6 months? How do I know? And so the reason why they say around 6 months is because that gets us to points 2 and 3, is because it actually depends upon the developmental age of your baby. So if you, for example, had your baby preterm, so for example, my little girl was 37 weeks when she was old, so not technically preterm, but still she was a little bit preemie, and so that actually had a little bit of an impact on her in terms of when she was ready to start solids. So the key thing is that we don't start before 4 months. 4 months is too young because of the fact that they're not developmentally ready at that age. So there's a high risk of choking, and so that's why we have them on liquid, because liquid is going to go down, or one of the reasons why we have them on liquid is going to go down their windpipe or esophagus much more easily. So that's why we say not before 4 months. Now, in terms of then the around 6 months, so the second thing to notice is that we do want to be actually introducing solids as early as your baby is developmentally ready. The reason for that is 2 things. Number one is that the research is now showing us that the earlier that we introduce solids, the less risk there is of allergies. And so for that reason, we do want to be introducing solids as early as possible. And the second reason is that there's a couple of key nutrients, particularly iron and zinc, that little ones can get more from their food than they can from breast milk or formula usually. So we want to be starting to introduce solids for those 2 reasons. So I usually find in talking to new parents that, particularly first-time parents, that most first-time parents are really apprehensive about introducing solids. It's a really scary thing. And so I often find that parents are leaving it later than what is ideal. So I guess my key message to you is, as soon as you think that your little one is developmentally ready, and as long as they're over 4 months, it's time to get started. And over this series, I'll be showing you how to do that. So how do we know that our little one is developmentally ready? Well, the second thing that we want to be looking at is, are they able to sit up properly? So if your little one is still like squishy down, not able to sit up properly, then they, again, they're not going to be able to sit up properly so that they have that nice, clear, straight windpipe, so that they're going to be able to swallow food that's a little bit more solid. So that's another sign that they're developmentally ready. The third one is that they're actually taking an interest in food. So they're following your spoon, they're opening their mouth when you bring a spoon near to them. They want to hold on to a spoon. Starting to put toys and things into their mouth. They're all signs that your baby is ready. Now, I've got a question here from Lily. Do you mean sit up on their own? Yes, Lily, I do. So that they can sit and hold themselves up properly for long enough that they can eat a meal. So not when you're propping them up, with a chair or something along those lines, but when they can actually sit by themselves, is often a really good sign that they're going to be developmentally ready for introducing solids. So then, in terms of then the how do we do it, the first thing I think is to go and prepare everything that you're going to need for introducing solids. And there's actually a fantastic checklist on the little Étoile Organics blog on their website. So I'd encourage you to go and check that out, of 10 different things that you might need for introducing solids. One of my personal favourites is a mess mat, because you're going to be doing a fair bit of floor cleaning. Particularly, it's not so much of a worry in the first couple of months, but once your little ones start self-feeding, then it's a very messy time. And so a big mess mat for the floor can make things a lot easier. And then probably the most important thing from my perspective is a good smock. I find that a lot of parents tend to use the drooling bibs for feeding their little ones, and it's just not going to keep your little one clean. So either decide to go without any type of bib and just decide that you're going to put their clothes in the wash. But a really good smock, I thought was one of the best investments. And I remember I bought 5 of them. It wasn't near enough, because if you're feeding your little one like even 3 times a day. But as you'll see in a minute when we get into schedules and things, I would be encouraging that you're having meals with your little ones more than that. Every meal that they have, you pretty much need a new smock. So you're doing a lot of washing when it comes to your little ones eating. So it's a really good investment to get a whole lot of full body smocks that covers their sleeves and covers their outfit completely, so that you're not having to wash their outfits all the time. Now, so yeah, what we tend to recommend is an eat, play, sleep model. And so I guess my next question to you guys is, how many of you have your babies or your little ones in a routine of when they're sleeping compared to more of a sleeping on demand? So I'd love you to post that in the chat for me. And as you're posting that, even for those of you who do have your little one sleeping on demand, you'll probably start to notice, particularly the more that time goes on, the more your little one tends to develop their own routine or schedule. And I'm seeing a fair bit of variety here as well. So yeah, some people are saying in a fixed routine, others are starting to, so this is a perfect example of Melinda. She says starting to develop a good sleep routine, 9 a.m, about 12:30 p.m, and then late in the afternoon. Nadine has hers scheduled. Fiona has a flexible time routine, but led by signs of tiredness. And so, yeah, that's exactly what even most parents who have their baby in a sleep on demand routine tend to see, is that they tend to find that their babies tend to find a more or less type of pattern. So what you want to be thinking about is starting to get your baby, like just for you to notice that routine. And usually the goal is eat, play, sleep. And so in terms of eating, again, the general recommendations is that before your baby is 9 months of age, that you do a milk feed first, so a breastfeed or a formula feed, depending upon how you're feeding your baby. And then you top up with solids. And then once your baby turns about 9 to 10 months, that you switch them around. So you do the solid feeds first and then top up with milk. Oh, Charlotte, I'm just noticing your baby's only doing half-hour naps. You poor thing. Feeling for you. So what I want you to know, the reason I'm telling you that is that when you are doing doing a milk feed first and then they're topping up with solids, and even literally for the first year of life, even if you are doing the feed first and then topping up with milk, most of your baby's nutrition is actually coming from their milk feeds. So food is actually more so about experimentation, play, getting used to new textures and flavors and smells. And so I want you to, like, my key recommendation to you when it comes to the first year of life is, like, you certainly want to be getting them into good nutrition routines, and we'll talk about that next week, in what type of foods to be providing for your little one. But the key thing is getting into a good routine and getting them used to enjoying food. And so I really like to think of food as, in some ways, like a playtime. It's a time for them to be able to play with different textures. And, you know, these days there's such a focus on organic toys, so using wooden toys and things instead of plastic. Well, from my perspective, food is the best toy that your baby can play with, because, you know, they're going to be putting their toys into their mouth. What better thing to be putting into their mouth than a strawberry or you know, or some puree, more so than a piece of plastic. So it's great for them to be having all of these new tastes. And they're all different foods. We've got different textures for them to play with, and it's just so interesting, but so great for their development. So I really want you to feel like it's a real time of experimentation for you as well as for your little one. So we want a lot of variety when it comes to the foods that you're giving your little one to play with and to eat. But in terms of routine, the more that you can think about what type of routine do I want when my baby is 2, you actually want to be starting that now. So the research shows that even from 3 months old, the more that you are getting your little one into a routine in terms of things like if you want your baby to sit at the table, for example, for meals, then you want to be starting that earlier rather than later. So for example, it's quite easy to say, oh, well, my baby is only 5 months now, so I'm just going to give her a little bit of a snack while I'm sitting here in the lounge room because it doesn't make a mess. I know I'm just going to be putting the spoon in her mouth. But believe me, you're setting yourself up for more difficulties than if you are getting him or her to eat at the dining table now. Like, now is the time to be getting them to eat at the dining table, so that they're getting into that routine of sitting at the table until they've finished their meal. Other habits that you might like them to be getting into might be things like what's some examples? Like, one of the things that I got my little one to do was, right from a very young age, was to, and she couldn't even do it, but I used to say, okay, well, when you finish your meal, we say, excuse me, mummy, may I please leave the table, and get her to do a little signal for me to say that she's finished her meal, so that she was indicating to me about her portion size. So when it comes to feeding our kids, because I'm sure you will have heard from other friends, or if you've got older kids as well, that the biggest issue down the track is fussy eating. And so this is where now is the time to be giving them that exposure of different foods. And we want to be making sure that we choose the types of foods and they choose how much food. So we never want to be giving our little ones, we never want them to be feeling like they have to finish everything on their plate, because little ones have an amazing ability to be able to regulate when they've had enough to eat. So we really want to be getting them to dictate that. So I put together just a rough schedule. Now, like I said, everybody is going to be different when it comes to your baby's routine. I'm just going to screen share for a minute just to give you a bit of an example. So this is just an example I've put together here. So your little one might wake up around 6 o'clock, and then you do a feed, as in a milk feed, then do some play. You might have an 8 o'clock breakfast. Now, even if your little one, again, is only 5 or 6 months, you can still be starting to follow a routine like this. Now, again, it doesn't mean that they have to. So say they wake up at 7 o'clock instead of 6 o'clock one day, that's fine. Like, you don't have to keep it to, to the minute, but it's just a bit of a guide for you so that you can have some routine and start establishing some rhythm for your life. And that also is really good for your baby to start developing that rhythm and knowing what's coming up next. Then you might do a bit of a brekkie. You might do your morning routine there, which from my perspective, again, is part of play. It's part of getting them used to these new experiences. And then some independent play, and then down for a nap. And so then that's where we've got our routine of eat, play, sleep. And then again here, so wake up, we'll do a feed, and then followed by some solids. And then you'll see again the rest of that routine. So like I said, every one of you is going to have a different routine that works for your baby. But I guess, again, I would just be encouraging you to start to be thinking about that routine, and particularly for yourself as well, so that you have that routine, because one of the best things when it comes to introducing solids is modelling. So for me, even though I'm a dietitian, I never ate so healthily as when I was introducing solids to my little one, because even if she wasn't going to eat at a mealtime, I would still put her in the high chair and put some food in front of her to play with, so that we were sitting at the table together and I was modelling to her, and I was only eating the types of foods that I wanted her then to eat in the future. And I've always found so many people have said to me, oh my goodness, your daughter eats everything. And I really think that part of the reason for that is that I've given her exposure to such a big variety of foods from such a young age. So yeah, I guess they're my key messages for you today, to think about introducing solids as a really fun thing, a time for your baby to play with food and get exposed to different types of foods. Make sure that you're prepared for mess. A quiet environment as much as possible is ideal, so that your little one can be really so that they're not too sleepy, like particularly when you're just starting out with introducing solids. If your little one is really sleepy, then they're not going to be as like there's greater risk of them choking. So you want them to be alert, which is why when they're woken up in the morning, same with us, you know, we wake up in the morning, we have our brekkie. So it's the same type of routine for our little ones. When they wake up, it's time for them to have something to eat. That's a great opportunity for them to have a bit of a play. All right, so I'm going to move over to a few questions now. So first question, my baby is ready and interested in solids, but starts to cry whenever I take him to sit in the high chair. Is there any technique to make him sit? Okay, so I think your name is Sapritha. Please let me know, Sapritha, if I'm mispronouncing your name. So I'd love to ask a few more questions about your situation. So you want to be setting up that great association. So I guess I'm wondering if there might be any reasons that you can think of that he doesn't like to sit in the high chair. I'm presuming, yeah, a little boy. So, for example, do you think it's because he usually likes sitting nice and close and cuddling to you? Do you think it's uncomfortable for him? Does he struggle to sit? Yeah, I'd love to hear a little bit more detail around that, around why you think that might be, because it would only really be an association. Another thing is, maybe have you tried a different high chair, or maybe a high chair even out at a cafe? So when you are first introducing solids, you don't have to introduce them at every meal either. So again, I really like the idea of getting babies into that routine as early as possible and getting them to sit at every meal with me. So I adjusted my eating routine to suit my little girl. And so, like I said, I'd even if she wasn't hungry, just getting her to have a little bit of a play with that food. So, yeah, just wondering about that for you, Sapritha. I'll move on to the next questions while you're giving me some additional answers. So Anushka says, do you need to wait 30 minutes after a breastfeed before giving solids? No, you do not at all, because the intention for giving solids isn't to provide nutrition, it isn't to fill them up. The intention of giving solids is literally for them to experiment, to get used to chewing, to strengthen up their jaws so that they're able to talk in the future, and to be able to get used to those new tastes and textures. So no, Anushka, you can definitely give solids straight away after a breastfeed. So this next question, my question is, what is the best food to start baby on solids? Rice or veggies or fruit? Great question, and we will be talking about that in a lot more detail next week. So I might just touch on it first of all to say that there's 3 common techniques for introducing solids. They're called spoon feeding, baby-led weaning, and combination feeding. So a combination is obviously a combination of both spoon feeding and baby-led weaning. Baby-led weaning is where you introduce quite solid foods and a large variety of foods quite quickly. And spoon feeding is where you let your baby both choose their foods and more so feed themselves, whereas spoon feeding is where you more so are choosing the food for them and feeding them. Usually a combination, I think, is best for most parents. So in terms of their first food, you'd usually start with a little bit of puree. And when I say puree, even before that, usually most parents would start with a bit of rice cereal. And particularly a rice cereal that's made for babies that has additional iron in it, because like I was saying earlier, iron's usually the main thing that little ones are missing out on. So that's usually your very first thing that you try for most parents. And then you can work your way up quite quickly over those next few weeks. But just because that's the most common thing doesn't mean that's what you have to do. All of those are great choices. The problem, I guess, with particularly rice is that it can be a little bit more, so you'd probably go more for a rice cereal than just rice itself. The fruit and veggies, again, it's quite easy to do a fruit or veggie puree, and usually we recommend a veggie puree before a fruit puree because it's not as sweet. So so usually either the veggie puree or the rice cereal. So that's actually the next question as well. Ash says, with the high allergy type foods, should we start these early or wait until they're older? Oh, great question, Ash. And so again, that's really what I want to touch on more in next section. But you definitely want to start these early and as early as possible. So as soon as you know that your baby is tolerating the texture of the foods, then you want to be really looking at introducing allergens as soon as possible, because the earlier that you start introducing allergens, the earlier your baby can build up their immune tolerance to them. And so if you're breastfeeding, then you actually want to be making sure that you're eating those allergens on a regular basis during breastfeeding. And when I say regular basis, usually it's about twice a week per allergen. Okay, so Sapritha got back to me and she said maybe a fear of anxiety. So Sapritha, how is your little one going in terms of sitting up in a different room? So say, for example, you're in the lounge room and you put him on the floor to sit. Would he be able to sit and hold his head up by himself? And I'll come back to you again when I find your answer. Okay, so Natalia says, my little girl is lactose sensitive. She doesn't have severe reactions. When should I try to introduce any dairy to her to see if it's improving? Okay, Natalia, so this is a really interesting question. So first of all, just to highlight that you want to make sure that it's lactose sensitive and not a cow's milk protein allergy. So lactose is carbohydrate in cow's milk, and cow's milk protein allergy is obviously the protein in cow's milk, and so they're different components of the cow's milk. So a cow's milk protein allergy is a much bigger, has much larger risk than lactose. So with lactose, the only real side effects, like it's not going to cause any damage if she has too much lactose. The only side effects is that she'll have maybe a little bit of nausea. She might have a little bit of a runny poos or a bit of an uncomfortable tummy. And so just it might just be a little bit uncomfortable for her for a couple of hours. So, and what we find with lactose is that the less frequently people have it, the more of a the more lactose sensitive they become. So what I would be recommending is tiny amounts of lactose on a more regular basis. So I guess I'd be interested, Natalia, to feed back to you again, if I can ask you some more questions around, is your little girl, like, are you breastfeeding or are you formula feeding? And are you somebody who feeds on demand, or are you somebody who is following a routine? So I'll try and come back to your questions too. Hannah says, will solids help my baby sleep better at night? Great question, Hannah. So unfortunately, though, there's no definite answer for you. So if your baby is hungry, then yes, they could do. So that may be a reason why, is that your baby isn't sleeping well. Without doing a full consultation with you, like, there's so many factors that can cause your baby not to sleep well. You know, are you doing controlled crying? Like, are you making sure that your baby is being put down properly? Is your baby cold? All of those types of questions. So the most, in terms of food though, like, as long as your baby is growing well and getting enough milk feeds, then it probably won't make any difference. But if your baby is hungry, then sometimes giving them a little bit more solids, like getting them onto solids, can make a little bit of a difference. So hopefully that answers your question. Probably not, but may do. Anushka, can you give baby purees to your baby if they're sitting with support? Anushka, I'm just going to have a look and see if I can see in the group here what age your baby is. 6 months. Okay. And Anushka, was your baby born on time, or was he or she born early? Was there any preemies there? And I guess my other question to you as well, Anushka, is your baby looking ready for solids in terms of other things? Like, is he or she opening their mouth ready for food? Are they able to hold a spoon okay? Does he or she look like they want to start eating? Hannah says, when should we start offering baby meat and seafood? Hannah, so that's probably a great question for next week. So I might actually defer that one to next week, and we'll talk about that then. Sapritha, yes, he sits and plays without any support. Fantastic. Great. So he's sitting and playing without any support. Okay, so what about if you were then to sit him, say, somewhere different, like outside, or like I said, in a cafe, and maybe just try it in a different environment is probably the next thing that I would try for you, Sapritha. Ash, what type of changes in baby stools should we expect when we start with food? Oh, great question, Ash. So usually stools, not so much in the first few months, but down the track when they're having more solids than milk. So when you get past nine months, and particularly when you get over the age of 1, that tends to be when your baby's stools tend to get a little bit harder, and they err more so on the side of constipation, because of the fact that there's a greater risk of dehydration, and greater risk of just, yeah, that's the main risk really, greater risk of dehydration. Actually, which brings me to another tip that I wanted to mention, is that when you're giving your little ones their meals, I'd always recommend giving them a little sippy cup as well. And you can do this again right from when you start solids, a little sippy cup with some boiled, cooled water for them to get into the habit of having a little drink of water with their meal as well, is another great habit for them to get into.
Can I just jump in there, Melanie?
Yeah, please do.
Hey, thanks so much everyone for your questions. We are just running a little bit over time, so what we might do is just answer a few more questions, and then anything that we don't get time to answer today, if you can just jump on the Facebook group and pop your questions in there, and then Melanie can reply directly on the Facebook group. Additionally, if anyone has popped any questions in the chat box, can you just put the question in the Q&A box? If it hasn't already been answered. Yeah, that's it. So we'll wrap up in about 5 more minutes.
Okay, all right, 5 more minutes. Sorry for going too long over time, but there's just so many great questions here, so it's fantastic. Okay, so okay, so Natalia said that her baby breastfeeding on demand and have fully eliminated dairy from your diet. Okay, and exclusively breastfeeding. Okay, well, if you have, I've got a million questions for you, Natalia, so I might follow up with you in the Facebook group as well. Okay. Where to go? So many questions. Okay. When you say sitting up, my bub can sit with support in a supported chair, but not alone on the floor. Sits for a couple of minutes, leaning forward on hands. Should I be waiting until she's a little bit more independent with sitting? Melinda, I just want to have a look at how old your little one is. 4.5 months. Yeah, look, I probably would be waiting until she is a little bit more independent with sitting. I don't think she'll be very far away, given the fact that it sounds like she's doing quite well. So I'd probably just wait another couple of weeks for you and then start trying. Obviously, it's up to you, but yeah, I don't think it'll be very long until she is sitting. It's amazing how quickly they develop, and then I'd get started. But it doesn't mean that you can't start sitting her in her high chair and just letting her watch you eat at meals and just really start getting prepared. Lily says, my baby's interested in the food I eat, but isn't ready to start eating as he can't sit up on his own. Can I let him lick my fruit? For example, strawberries, apples, bananas. He also has 2 teeth coming up. Oh, gorgeous. Yes, you could let him lick your fruit. And again, there's no problems with them playing with food. So like things like just giving them a big apple, like they're not going to even take a bite of that, but that's something that they can have a play with, you know. Yes, licking it is going to be fine, Lily. And is there any danger in the sugars from the fruit from his teeth? So when you start solids, for me, as soon as they have a couple of little teeth and start solids, that's when I started also getting into the routine of brushing their teeth as well, or brushing my daughter's teeth as well. I started without any toothpaste, just a little toothbrush, a little baby toothbrush, again, just to get those routines right from an early age. And so, yeah, just with a little bit of water. So Melinda says that her little one has been putting toys and hands in her mouth for a while and recently started licking everything. I was told this is a key sign for food readiness. Is this true? Yes, it is, absolutely. It sounds like that it's definitely getting ready. But like I said, I don't think it will hurt for you still just to wait another, I'd probably give it just another 2 weeks, help making sure that she's sitting up a little bit better, and then I would get on to trying. He's born at 36 weeks. He's interested in our food, looks at us everywhere when reaches out for the spoon when I've been giving rice cereal. Oh, that's fantastic. 36 weeks. Yeah, so it's great that he's interested in food and he's reaching for the spoon. That's all really positive. The fact that he was born at 36 weeks, just remember that in some ways that means that you've got a couple of extra weeks up your sleeve as well, Anushka. So yeah, I might wrap up there, but just to say I'm really keen to keep answering your questions in the Facebook group, so feel free to post them in there, and look forward to having another chat with you all again next week. So make sure you jump on and say hello then.
Thanks, Melanie. That was awesome. Thanks so much, everyone that jumped on and asked your questions. We'll definitely be sending you out some free LEO pouches. I noticed some of your questions we are going to be covering in the next couple of sessions as well. So the next session next week, we're going to be going through what foods to introduce, food textures, and how to ensure your bub is meeting their nutrient requirements. And then on our last session, we're going to be going through organic. And so I guess benefits of organic, also heavy metals, allergenic foods, and all about baby poop, which is always a hot topic. So hopefully we might be able to answer some of your questions in the next session as well. And I think that is everything. Looking forward to seeing you all in the Facebook group, and looking forward to seeing you next week.
Yeah, and if I can just encourage all of the parents out there to post a photo of your little one in the Facebook group as well. I would love to see your little ones. And yeah, it just helps me know, like it helps me gauge a lot when I'm giving my responses as well. So yeah, if you get a minute to do that, that would be fantastic. Thanks so much.
Perfect. All right. Thanks, guys. Bye.